Greetings everyone, I'm Kevin, and it's time to do the mid-year book freakout tag. Something like that. You've probably seen this tag circling around the internet for a while. It is just like mid-year. We've passed mid-year. We are in the 7th month, so perfect timing for a mid-year freakout tag. This was an original tag created by Chami and Eli, and I will leave their channels linked down below. The first question is best book of the year so far, and because I am who I am, I cannot say one best book. I am going to bring up 5. And these 5 books are the books that kind of stuck with me. And the first of them is one that I consider like absolutely top 5 of 2021 so far. And it is Dating Makes Perfect by Pintip Dunn. Absolutely adore this book. It's about Winnie and her. She has 2 twin sisters who are older than her, and they're going to start college. They come from a traditional Thai family, and their mom is like, you should find husbands, but the twins who start college are like, but we were never allowed to date, so how can we? Like, how are we supposed to find boyfriends or husbands if we've never even dated, because they weren't allowed to date in high school. And so because of that, the mom and the dad decide, okay, Winnie, you're allowed to date now that you're like, because she's in high school, she's in her senior year, like you are allowed to date, but you're not allowed to date for real. We will decide who you're gonna date and you will practice dating. And the person that they choose for her is her childhood best friend turned enemy, and his name is Matt, and he is absolutely fantastic. He is also from a traditional Thai family that is friends with Winnie's family. And so it's kind of like these parents are like, it's perfect practice. So you're gonna date Matt for a while and you will do like these different kinds of dates inspired by rom-com movies, which I also thought was kind of like a fun thing. And there is this kind of like rivalry thing going on between Winnie and Matt, because in Winnie's eyes, they hate each other. Like they can't stand each other. Like when she and Matt, they were best friends when they were kids, and for Winnie, like suddenly they stopped being friends and they started being mean to each other instead, and Winnie was very like confused, like why are we not friends anymore, and things like that. And it's been like a long time. They're both like seniors in high school now, and I just love this so much. It's so cute. It's such a wonderful book. I love it. The romance in this was perfect. The characters, I love the characters. It was just such a fun and great book. And something that I really love about this being a romance, it's a YA romance, is that there is, usually in a romance, there is this big thing that happens towards the end where they break up. And usually in romance novels that I like, the majority of them that I've read, when it's something that breaks up the characters, that there is some kind of misunderstanding or something, there tends to be a kind of moment that one of the characters begs forgiveness and the other person accepts the apology. But here, the big thing that happens, it does break them up, but after our main character apologizes and says like, what I did wasn't right, like I'm so sorry that I did that, the other person also apologized, like, yeah, I understand and I didn't handle it very well either. So I thought this was like very refreshing. I really love the fact that both characters apologized for how they reacted and acted, instead of one person apologizing, doing a grand gesture, and the other person accept an apology, because usually when there is a conflict, it's two-sided, it's not just one-sided. So I just thought that was really nice. I highly recommend this if you're looking for YA romance with fake dating and kind of enemies to lovers. The next book is a book that I consider like my favorite fantasy of the year, and it is Girl Serpent Thorn. And this was just such a fun ride. we're following a princess who is a monster, kind of. If you've read the Shatter Me series by Tahara Mafi, she is kind of like Juliet, that if you touch her, you will die. And the Princess Soraya, she doesn't want to live that way. Like, she wants to have a normal life. No one knows that Soraya exists in this world, and all she wants is a normal life. So she strikes a deal and to lose her powers, and then she finds out why she had those abilities in the first place. And I just thought this story was really, really well done. This world is so amazing. I really, really enjoyed this so much. It is also like a sapphic romance in it. It's not a big part of the book, the romance. It's more like the story of Soraya and how she kind of fights against these Dachmes. And this also, like, the world and the mythology in this book is based on Persian mythology, which I thought was really, really fun. I just thought all of those things were really well done. This was such a good story, and I rarely give out like high ratings for YA fantasy or fantasy in general, but this was just so good. The next one is my favorite middle grade of 2021, and it is Wonderscape. Like, look at this, it's gorgeous. This book is so interesting. We have like these three characters who do not really know each other, and they hear a dog barking in a place where a dog shouldn't be, and they go to kind of like save the dog, and suddenly they're on this big ship in an alternate reality in the future. They end up in the year 2473, so a long time in the future. And not only that, but some people in this world are historical figures. And that twist, like with that, was so fun and so interesting. And this has a mystery element to it as well. This is just like so fun. And I love riddles. I love like these different things, trying to piece stuff together. And in this world, this is a game that they got to, like a virtual game. And every single world is a different hero, and the hero is a historical figure, and our three characters have to finish the challenges in each world, win the races, win the games and challenges that are in the world, so that they can move on to the next thing. And all of that was really fun to see, and all of like how these heroes, these historical figures were integrated, like all of that was really, really fun. And just the whole mystery in this, I thought was brilliantly done. So I really, really loved this book. The next favorite I have is my favorite nonfiction, and it is also my favorite graphic novel of 2021. And it is They Call Us Enemy by George Takei, Eisinger, Scott, and Becker. And this is kind of like a memoir of like George Takei's childhood and life. This book tells the story of what it was like to grow up being Japanese in the US during the time of the World War II, in like the Pearl Harbor, getting sent to concentration camps and stuff like that in the US. I do know that in these camps are also called internment camps, but here they're called concentration camps, and that's why I'm using the term concentration camp instead of internment camp. But this tells the story of what it was like to grow up there, and what their family went through, everything that happened being Japanese in the US, everything that their family had to go through to keep the family together was just, it was like so powerful to read about. And I also like the whole like the art style in this book, that it's black and white. I really like the art style in this. And I think this story is very powerful. And we also get to follow George Takei in his adult life, and after this, being in these concentration camps, and his life after that, and his work with like being Japanese American and for Japanese Americans, and also like how he got into acting and Star Trek. I love Star Trek, so that was also very fun. But like that we got to see all of that as well. This was just such a beautiful story. And I also think like this matters so much because this is a real story. This is a true story. This shows a side of the US that I didn't even even know existed. The last book I want to talk about for like my best books I've read so far is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. This book was so beautiful, so well done, and I'm not really surprised. This is my 4th Matt Haig book that I've read. I've rated all of them a 4-star or more. I gave this 5 stars, but I really enjoyed this. This is the story of Nora, and she is like starting off this book being very suicidal, and she feels like there is no point to living. So trigger warning for suicide attempt and suicidal thoughts, because there is that in the beginning of the book. After taking her life, she ends up in this midnight library that is kind of like a bridge between life and death. And in this library, she might meet a librarian, of course. And the librarian says that you're in the midnight library, and behind them there is like a clock that is 0000 because it's midnight. And the librarian also says that around us, all of the books that you see, the infinite amount of books around us, are alternate lives that you could have lived. If you made a different choice, you could have ended up in this book or in that book. And there is also a book of regrets that Nora goes through, and she sees like every regret that she's had. And so she goes back and she says, I want to give me a book where I made this choice instead, or that choice instead. And she gets to relive her life, or not relive, but she gets to live her life if she made another choice. And she's just put into that alternate reality's version of her without any backstory, anything like that. She just ends up there in her own body in an alternate reality, and she has to kind of figure out what to do, how she ended up there and stuff. I just thought this was a very interesting story to see, because everyone has regrets. Everyone asks, what if I did this? What if I did that? I wish I hadn't done that. Or, what I took away from this is I started thinking, what if I made a different choice? How would my life be? I just thought this was very eye-opening, and the whole thing that we learn with Nora as she goes along, when she realizes she doesn't want to die. And that was very powerful. As someone who has struggled with suicidal thoughts and suicide attempts in the past, and still struggling with mental health issues, I thought this was really well done. And I know that Matt Haig is very open about his own depression and anxiety. I just thought this book was really, really well done. The second question is best sequel of 2021 so far. I have read a few, but the one that really was so good was Dokepi Vicious Spirits. I love this book. I know it says companion to Wicked Fox. It is not a companion, because this book takes off right after the events of Gumi Wicked Fox. This book just follows a different perspective and another main character, and Juno in this book, so good. I love him. What I also really love with this is Juno, the main character, who is a Dokepi. He starts off the book and he has this big journey with himself throughout the book, and I loved seeing that and just how he progressed with the book. And the romance in this was also very, very good. This story is centered around Korean mythology. It's also set in Korea, and I don't want to say too much about this because it is a sequel, but I really love this. If you've read Gumi Wicked Fox, read this. It's brilliant. If you haven't read Gumi Wicked Fox and you enjoy K-dramas and Korean mythology, read that book too. Question number 3 is a new release you haven't read yet but want to. And for this, I have She Drives Me Crazy by Kelly Quinlan. This is a fake dating, enemies to lovers romance between a cheerleader and a basketball player, and it's sapphic. And it's set in high school. I'm really excited to read this. I just haven't had a chance to do so yet, but I'm really excited to read this. It has fake dating. I love fake dating. It is sapphic. Queer representation. Hello, thank you. And it is also enemies to lovers, which I'm also very much here for. So I think this will be very, I'm very excited to read this. And then I'm also very excited about A Fell Love Story. This is about this story follows rivaling restaurants, which I think that is very, very fun. When books take on the rival business thing, I think is very fun. So I'm excited to read that book as well. I am currently waiting for my copy to arrive so I can read it. And then another book that is a new release that I haven't had a chance to read yet is A Dark and Hollow Star by Ashley Shuttleworth. Really excited for this, and I've heard nothing but great things about this. It is also like queer representation, it is a fantasy, and it's just like I've only heard great things about this. I'm really excited to read it. Question number 4. Most anticipated release for the second half of the year, so July through to December. And the first one is Last Girl Standing by Katie Zhao. I am ridiculously excited for this book. Another book that I'm very excited about is She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. This also sounds absolutely amazing. And the last book is contemporary romance, and it is The Dating Dare, which involves kind of fake dating, I think, elements to it. It's by J.C. Lee. Really excited to read that as well. It sounds so good. Question number 5 is Biggest Disappointment. And this book is so sad. In my opinion, it's so sad. My biggest disappointment is Dating Bryson Keller by Kevin Van Wy. The reason this is a big disappointment is because I read it, I loved it, and then going into Goodreads, I found out that it's plagiarized. I don't know that a lot of people talk about it or anything like that. I've seen people on Goodreads comment about it, but it is essentially based on a manga called 7 Days. And the thing like with all of that is like reading a book, really enjoying it, and then finding out that the whole premise, the setting, a lot of things was directly taken from another story that is unknown. That doesn't sit well with me. And I know that some people say that it's not similar enough to be plagiarized, but the thing is, this is set in a high school. 7 Days is set in high school. This involves a guy who dates the first person who asks him out on Monday and breaks up with them at the end of the week. Both this and 7 Days have that. This has a guy called Kai who very like spontaneously and in the spur of the moment like says dating Bryson Keller without really like thinking about it. So it just kind of comes out that he asks Bryson Keller to date him, and so they date because like the dare that is in this book, the dare isn't in 7 Days, but in 7 Days the guy asks the other guy, I don't remember their names, and he jokes and says date me, and so they date for a week. And like both books have that whole premise and the whole thing like, will they survive the week? And like all of that is the same. Maybe the characters aren't exactly the same. It's set in 2 different countries as well. But the whole premise and the setting of like a school environment is the same. And like it's what's really striking me is the fact that this is more similar to 7 Days than These Violent Delights is similar to Romeo and Juliet. And These Violent Delights is a Romeo and Juliet retelling. And this is more similar to a book that it's said to be inspired by, but it's not inspired by, it's based on. I don't like it when someone takes a story that isn't very well known and it's done by someone from another country, it's original written in another language, and then take it and make it your own without really changing that much. Like the manga 7 Days was written by a Japanese woman. It's originally written in Japanese. And like I'm not okay with that. So this was a huge disappointment because of all of that. I changed my Goodreads review of this book and I changed my rating from 5 stars to 1 star for this because I'm just not here for taking someone else's story, not changing that much, and call it your own. I'm not here for it. Then we have my biggest surprise of 2021 so far, and it is Frostblood by Ellie Blake. I love this. Didn't expect to love this as much as I do. Like this is set in a world where being a Frostblood is the norm. And we're following Ruby, who is a Fireblood, meaning that she has like fire in her, she has a temper, she's more warm-blooded, and she controls fire. And she lives in a world where everyone should be Frostblood. And Frostblood is the opposite. It's people who are colder, like cold-blooded, they are more like calm and reserved, and they can also control snow, ice, like cold things. And early on in this book, Ruby is found out. Being a Fireblood is illegal. You will face a death penalty for being Fireblood. And so she is found out and she's on the run. And this is just like such a fun story, and I love like the world building in this, and the whole like with the fire blood versus the frost blood, and there is a romance in this book that I also absolutely love. It also contains a rebellion against the king, which I also thought was very, very fun. So I really love this. I didn't expect to love it as much as I did, so big surprise. Question number 7 is favorite new author. I wouldn't say that I have a new favorite author, but these two authors I will definitely read more from, and they are Rachel Lynn Solomon, who wrote The X Talk. I thought this book was very, very fun and light, and just a very fun read that was very easy to get through, and I like the story and Rachel Lynn Solomon's writing, so I'm excited to read more books from her. And another author that I have on my radar now that I will read more from is Sue Moorcroft, who wrote Summer on a Sunny Island. Like travel romance, I love travel romance, and she writes a lot of them, so I'm excited to read more books. I can travel to more places and read about people falling in love in other countries and stuff like that. Like I really love that whole thing, so I will definitely check more of Sue Moorcroft, check more of her books is what I mean. Then we're on to newest fictional crush, and it is Lana Henderson from Just for Show. She is such a fun, sarcastic girl. Just for Show is a sapphic romance between a lesbian woman and a bisexual girl. Both are women. Like saying one is a woman and one is a girl sounds like it's illegal. Or, underage. But both are women, they're basically the same age. One of them is a couples therapist, and she wants to give out her book. And the book is about like relationships and helping like people with their relationship issues. In order for her to sell this book, she has to be engaged, because you can't be single and give out a relationship book, because people will say like, but you're single, so obviously this book doesn't work. Like, why should I trust your advice when you aren't even in a relationship? So she finds an actor who is Lana Henderson, and she hires Lana to be her fake fiance. So they pretend to be engaged just so that this girl can give out her book. This was just such a fun book. It's written by Jay. Jay has some of the best adult sapphic romances that I've ever read. Absolute, always so fun, always so like characters that are just like their chemistry. I love it. Lana was just so fun and just absolutely fantastic. So if I have to pick a fictional crush, it's gonna be her. Question number 9 is newest favorite character, and I picked Juno from the Kevin Vicious Spirits. As I said earlier, I absolutely love him and his progression in this book, and just his character as a whole, everything that he's gone through up to the point where he is currently, his issues with himself and with people. He's just such a well-written character that I absolutely adore. So June is definitely my newest favorite character. Question number 10 is a book that made me cry. And for this, I chose Arvo Miljö by Vigdis Hjorth. This is the story of a woman called Berjut, and she does not have any relationship to her parents currently. And this is about inheritance and like who is inheriting what. She has 2 sisters and a brother, so there are 4 kids. The dad dies, and they're trying to kind of like who is going to inherit what and stuff. And the whole thing in this book is the fact that we follow Berjut and her issues because of her upbringing with a toxic family. And this was just so hard-hitting for me because I relate. And this is just like, I've been open about this. I don't have a relationship with my parents because like my story is up there if you want to check it out. And so this story hit very hard for me because I relate to it, and I sympathize with Berjut so much. And this is based on Vigdis Hjorth's own life, so it's very like special in that way as well. It is available in English if you want to read it. I have the Swedish copy. It is original written in Norwegian, but you can read it in English if you read in English. Question number 11, a book that made you happy. And for this, I chose Meet Cute Club. I absolutely love this story. It's a mainly romance. And these two characters, their banter is so fun. And it is following like this romance book club called Meet Cute Club that Mr. Jordan, who is this guy, he is in charge of this book club, and his love interest Rex, this dude, is not as much into romance. Like, he doesn't believe in love in that way. He comes from a toxic family, so I relate to him a lot for that reason too. Just like this Hjort's book, and this was just so happy. This book was just so beautiful, and just it made me so happy. Like, I was smiling through this, and it was difficult to read and it was easy to read at times, and it's just a book that made me really happy. This was a joy to read. Question number 12 is a beautiful book you bought this year, and it is Wonderscape. Like, look at this. Gorgeous, like absolutely amazing. Like, this is breathtaking. So this is definitely the book that I would say, like, this is the most beautiful book I own. Like, look at the detail on the different worlds. Beautiful. The last question is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? My biggest priority, like when it comes to books I want to have finished by the end of the year, I want to read more books of the books that I own, but I also want to finish series. So we have like the Frostblood trilogy, Fireblood is the second book, Nightblood is the last book. So I really hope to finish this series this year. Another series that I want to finish is the Illuminate File series. I have only read Illuminate, the first book, so I have the second and the third book to read in this series as well. I also feel like with series, because I read Frostblood and Illuminate this year, I don't want there to be like too much time before I read the next book in the series, because if I wait too long, I will have to reread the first books. Like, not that it bothers me if I would have to do that, but I would rather not, you know? So that was it for this video. I hope you enjoy, and please leave a like if you did, and comment down below what you think. Until next time, good reading. Bye.